serve as the Director for Student Experience and Impact here at FIU in Washington, D.C., and we're excited to have you here. And for those watching in Miami, welcome. To tell you a little bit about the Talent Lab, it is an opportunity for our students to connect with our facility here. We bring up 15 to 20 students per fly-in, which we have about 23 of them in a given academic year, a variety of different topics. And we then help those students connect in placing them with internships and having an interest and an appreciation for Washington, D.C., where we try to make sure that they come up here, secure internships so that they can go back to Miami with extra knowledge, apply that in and out of classroom experience, that experiential learning that they have gained at MMC or BBC on campus, and bringing that here and then returning that back when they leave Washington, D.C., or we hope to keep them here semester after semester and gaining other opportunities as we have many alum in the area who are able to then mentor, but also help them, but also for them to become part of this community here in Washington, D.C. And so today you're going to get to meet our Hamilton Scholars, but it is part of our opportunities that we try to connect our students. So if you know of any students that are interested in Washington, D.C., we always want to work with them and help them with their resumes and get them internships. But it's my pleasure to introduce Shar Stanberry, or Shirley, to talk a little bit about our Hamilton Scholars class.
Hi, everyone. My name is Char Stanberry. I am a proud FIU law alum from 2013. And then also I'm ecstatic to, for the last couple of years, I've served as the professor for the Hamilton Scholars Washington and DC course. So just want to talk a little bit about the course itself. So we have these wonderful Hamilton Scholars that are doing internships here in Washington, DC, whether it's on Capitol Hill, whether it's with the executive branch or with a nonprofit or a think tank. And then part of their experience is that they have a class, and when we come into class we talk about several things, whether it's what is a lobbyist, how does the executive branch work, how does the legislative branch work. We bring in guest speakers, whether they come from the campaign field, and a lot of what we learn in this class is purposely about how does DC works, but also how does FIU fit within DC. How can we have a broader and a greater voice into what FIU stands for, the talent that we have at FIU, and how it can be expanded here in Washington, D.C. And so I'm ecstatic that you're here tonight, and that if you're listening online, because you're going to see some of the wonderful public policy projects that our Hamilton Scholars have been working on, in which FIU was their client. And so I'm going to give the mic right back to Michelle, but just want to say thank you for being here tonight, and also thank you to the wonderful Hamilton Scholars that are here, that alumni that's here, and also those online that continue to make this project and program work.
Thank you so much. And now our Hamilton Scholars will begin their presentations with Rochelle Moya, who will introduce herself. And then you can pass it on.
Hello, everyone. Now, give me a second while I pull up my PowerPoint, because fancy technology. Hello, everyone. So my name is Rochelle Moya, and today I'll be presenting on the National Full-Scale Testing Infrastructure for Community Hardening in Extreme Wind, Surge, and Wave Events, or other known as NEASH. To start off, a little bit about myself. I'm currently a senior at FIU. I'm doing a dual degree in Public Relations, Advertising, and Applied Communications, and International Relations. And this semester, I got the opportunity to intern at the Partnership for Public Service, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works to help build trust in the government and kind of help strengthen the government. And some of my interests are communications and press, particularly geared towards public policy. So going into what is NEASH. So NEASH is a full testing science facility that is meant to kind of simulate hurricanes, tornadoes, and other big weather events. So in 2022, the National Science Foundation gave FIU and 10 other schools a grant to be able to fund this, the planning of this infrastructure. And this facility we will essentially simulate big weather events that go up to 200 miles per hour and up to 16 feet in height, and it will eventually become one of the biggest infrastructures worldwide of this sort. And it essentially helps kind of study the impacts of hurricanes and big weather events on coastal infrastructure and communities, and kind of help prepare those communities in a way that they can kind of handle when big storms come forward. So there we go. So like, why is niche so important? So every single year, hurricanes and big weather events in general cost the United States billions of dollars worth of damages, not including injuries and deaths that happen as well. In 2023 alone, up to $1 to $5 billion, it was estimated that it cost Florida by itself. And then for 2024, we still don't have the final projections of how much it cost everything, but it is estimated that it costs the whole of the United States up to $500 billion worth in damages to infrastructure and communities throughout. So clearly this is a very important problem that we're having, because as climate change keeps going and like things happen, these things are only going to keep getting more harder and like more impactful towards our communities. So it's very important that we're able to protect our coastal communities that tend to be some of the more disproportionately affected communities in the United States towards these events. So some of our main actors that have been playing into this project are FIU Extreme Events Institute. They are the ones that have been working to help build and plan this facility and kind of do the big leg of everything. We've also been working with the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, specifically the Subcommittee on Environment, and then as well as the U.S. House Representatives Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, specifically the Subcommittee on Research and Technology and the Subcommittee on Environment as well. Other partners that we've had on this project are the NSF and NIST that have helped grant us this money so that we could be able to do this project, as well as Aerolab, which is a private company that has helped us fabricate like conceptual designs for this project so that we were able to create a plan for the future. And then the U.S. Senate Committee and the U.S. House of Representatives Committee, we have been working hand in hand with them to be able to put language in FY25 for next year so that we can keep getting funding and keep having this project moving forward as the years go on. And then this year, we were able to get our research, like the research published on the National Science Foundation's website. So one of the big projects that I had this year was kind of help communicate our progress through this, this article to the different congressional like partners that we had. So a lot of the work that I did was send out emails and make sure that we're communicating with all our partners so that they know where we're at with our project and they know how it's going along and where we're getting our funding and things like that. And then, there we go. Just for timeline's sake, this project is still very much in the early stages of it, and it is an ongoing project. In February of 2022 is when they started the initial designs for the project, and that is aimed to be ending around January of 2026. And then in February of 2026 is when the final designs will be finalized. Sometime between that time and December of 2027, which is where we aim to finish the final designs, we will need to present this project to Congress to kind of grant us additional funding so that we are able to progress into the construction and operational stages of this project. So it's still very much subject to change based off of when we get our funding from the government and based off of the things that we get approved from Congress. And it's very much going forward. So then in 2028, November of 2028 is when we aim to start construction, which will not be ending until most likely February of 2034, which is when we hope that the operations will begin for the infrastructure. And then another one of like the big projects that I had this semester was making a meeting with our partner schools. We have all these other different schools. So UF, Oregon State, University of Delaware, Wayne State, Notre Dame, Stanford, Georgia Institute of Technology, Colorado State, and the University of Illinois. So we're working with those other universities to help make this project happen. So one of the big things that we did this semester was create a meeting that's going to happen in January of 2025 to help kind of establish ties with these other universities and establish ties with their governmental works like side of things, so that when we do have to present our project up to the federal government, we can have a stronger united front so that we're able to get more funding and this project can actually see it fruition. And that's it. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions?
Examples of projects that you'd be able to do with this?
So I don't have specific examples. I know that for the most part, this is gonna help kind of simulate hurricanes and like different coastal events that could happen. So like tornadoes, wind surges, storm surges, things like that. And then it's gonna kind of help us build infrastructure for that. But I'm not 100, I don't have specific examples.
So you hit on it when you said storm surge. So what's unique about this is it's both a hurricane simulator and a wave simulator. We have one of each of those, right? UM has a wave simulator, we have all wind, but we don't have them together. So one of the things I'm super excited about is I'm working with the Army Corps of Engineers because they've got the only game in town, something like this. One of the things that drives me crazy about Florida is if I buy a house next to somebody else on, let's say, Biscayne Bay, and I cut down all the mangroves so I have a better view of the bay, and a storm comes and wipes out my house, I pay no more insurance than the person who cut down that mangroves or something like that, right? And so the insurance companies have agreed that if somebody can show them an experimental data set that shows things like mangroves are protections against storm surge, that they'll think about adjusting the premiums. And this facility will allow us to do those kinds of things.
And it's also the scale is very different than the U of M facility. It is going to be 1-1, which is going to be unique, and that's important for center dynamics too. So it really is a world class.
Another question for Rochelle? So what did you like about your experience here in DC, and then what are you going to take when you go back to Miami, you go back home, what are you going to talk about to your fellow students, and how about your experience here, but about the stuff that you've learned?
Yeah, so overall, I feel like Hamilton Scholars and like the program in general has done a very good job of like showing me the different sides of the government and get me thinking of like what I necessarily want to be doing post-graduation, which is coming up at some point. So, it's something that you need to start thinking. So I think like one of the things that was really eye-opening was kind of like doing all the networking and being able to talk to all these people that have kind of knowledge and have worked in the government or adjacent to the government, and kind of like see their point of views on things. I also feel like I'm a communications major for the primary, so it's like a very different take on working in the government, just because most people are going in for like legislative things or like foreign relations things or things like that. So like communications is a very like niche thing to be doing within the government. So like being able to meet people that have done things that are communications related and kind of give me perspective on like, hey, you have these options. Like, it's not just like you work for an organization and that's it. And like that's kind of like the end game. It's like there's like many options that you may have not considered. So that's kind of like a cool thing that I was able to have my eyes open to. For the going back to Miami part, I'm actually not going back to Miami. I'm staying here. I'm gonna be working.
Success.
I guess it's a good thing it worked. But I do think that it's like a cool opportunity, and definitely this project has opened a lot of my eyes on like how the university works with the government and works with kind of all sides of the government, not just like the representatives that are local to Miami, but also like the people that are up here in DC and making things happen. So that's been very cool to see, especially when it's like a very long-term project such as this, where you're not necessarily seeing something physically happen right now. It's like more of like, okay, we're trying to fight so that that can physically happen in the future. I think, so Kenny is now gonna go next.
Thank you, everyone. Let me make sure I can pull this up on our fancy wall here. I definitely recommend playing with this after we do some presentations. All right, everyone. So my name is Kenrick Chioka, and what I'm working on is advancing Everglades restoration through technological innovation. Not an expert like Rochelle is with the wall. Oh, where's the pen? There we go. So a little bit about myself. I'm interning with Representative Kathy Castor. She represents Tampa. I'm studying political science and international relations, and I'm actually graduating in 9 days. So looking forward to that. And going back to South Florida, haven't decided whether I'll be here or work with the local government, but definitely want to continue working on behalf of the Everglades and with wonderful people like Todd Crowell, who is actually the researcher that I've been working with. So a little bit about Todd. You might know him, well known around these parts. He's a professor, director of the Institute of Environment, and he's also the principal investigator of the Center for Aquatic Chemistry and Environment. So what he's working on is coastal conservation and restoration using AI and robotics and other technologies. And what are we restoring? We're restoring the historic flow of the Florida Everglades. So the story of Florida is that it was bought and sold and developed, and through land acquisition, we've changed this historic flow. So water it's rained. If you live in Florida, it's very rainy, much like it is today, except a lot harder. And the water flows through the Kissimmee River Basin into Lake Okeechobee and then out into Florida Bay. But we've built roads and bridges and homes to control the water. We've ended up altering the flow, and now we shoot water out the estuaries and out Florida Bay and out canals. So if you see a canal or a lake, it's not just there for the beauty of your backyard. It has a purpose. But what that does is it threatens the drinking water supply for nearly 13 million Floridians and all our visitors. It also jeopardizes our economy, tourist economy that we rely on. So what we're doing at FIU and with Professor Crowell, Dr. Crowell, is restoring the flow, and we're using AI and robotics to do that. Previously, what we would do is we would, let me tell you a little bit about the consequences first. So the consequences of pretty much controlling the water make it so that we have algal blooms, and what ends up happening is we flush this out through our canals and our estuaries, and we end up impacting our economy, like we said, because we have fish kills, and I'm sure if you're from Florida, you might have been to a beach. You don't want to go to a beach when there's a bunch of dead fish or red tide there. So to resolve that, there's federal-state partnership, and we've spent billions of dollars lifting the Tamiami Trail and other roads and ensuring that the water can flow freely back to its historic flow. And just some photos here. This road, this is US 27. It's impeding the flow of water. what we've done in other examples is we've lifted this. This is the Tamiami Trail, so the water can flow under and restore the flow. And this didn't just occur overnight. We've had researchers out in the water and wading in the water knee deep. And we've used helicopters to go out to areas that are inaccessible. And it's exacerbated a lot of resources. So now what we're doing is we're using AI and robotics for nearly real-time monitoring. So if you see here, we have buoy data from one of these buoys that is out right now. There's 8 of them, if I'm not mistaken. And this one is in the Miami Canal. So we can see the water data real time. There's 24 parameters, and we can test the quality, how fast it's moving. And from there, we can make changes to impact our ecologic impact. So who are we doing this? It's not just FIU, but it's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, it's NIST, and other key stakeholders. And we're doing it to address rising sea levels and also to protect our drinking water supply. So this is happening in our backyard, and it is really a model for the globe. It's not just us that we're working on. So we have, this has been an example for Texas, Louisiana, and other nations throughout the world. So how are we doing it, though? We're doing it through funding. That is what we need. So in fiscal year 2023 and 2024, we had success. We got nearly $10 million for monitoring saltwater intrusion. We got nearly $10 million for using robotics and autonomous monitoring. And we also, in 2024, we got $10 million for Climate Ready Tech Hub, which we'll also hear about later. And $2 million increase for the EPA for water quality testing. Nearly $100 million for Biscayne Bay restoration. So that really highlights that what happens above Lake Okeechobee and downward goes all the way into Florida Bay. We've also secured programmatic language that ensures that the federal government partners with public local universities like FIU. But there's more to be done. So now we have requests still. So this year, we're requesting $1 million increase from the EPA. We're requesting further programmatic language. So what we've done with this money is we've pretty much modernized our testing capacities, then we've automated it, and now we're really honing in on collaborating and getting more opportunities for students and for researchers and making a difference. So we're having greater engagement with the Army Corps of Engineers, and this really underscores FIU's leadership in nature-based solutions and using technology for conservation. So last week, we were fortunate enough to partner with the Everglades Foundation, and we hosted a reception and a panel that was moderated by Dr. Crowell.
And you.
Myself included. I provided some policy insights, but I do a little bit of the policy. He does the science, the real legwork there. But we had CEO of the Everglades Foundation, Eric Eichenberg, and then we also had Bradley Watson, Vice President of Policy and Engagement. And this is about more than just the federal government, more than about FIU. It's about ensuring we have partnerships to really maximize our advocacy efforts. So interning with Representative Castor, I see different groups come in, and it's not just one school or one group. It's a collective of people. So we have a predator here, an alligator. It's an indicator species, and that's their solitary animal. Everybody in DC can somewhat be a predator, but they all come together for a limited amount of resources that we have over there in that nice building, the Capitol. So you guys might be familiar with these two individuals. There was recently an election in November, if you didn't hear about it, a series of elections. And no matter who is in office, FIU is going to show up and advocate for our society. So we got, with President Biden, he requested $400 million, and WRDA authorized $1 billion. With President Trump, he requested $260 million in 2021, and WRDA authorized nearly $1 billion. So it's not that far off no matter who it is, we'll continue to show up at the door and make sure that we get our part of the pork. A lot of people in Mr. Trump's administration from Florida, and that will be significant to our research going forward. So these are some of the key stakeholders, agencies that we partner with. It includes executive agencies like the president's, and their agencies below, but it's also the House, the Senate, right? And specifically the appropriations, because they are the people that provide us the resources. So there's a subcommittee on energy and water development, and we have a member of the Florida congressional delegation, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and she is a steadfast advocate of FIU. And we also have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who executes all of the actual water infrastructure that we are working on and influencing through Todd's research. And we have the National Institute Standards and Technology, the National Science Foundation, who provide grants and support. And we also have the EPA, who also provides further resources and support. So here we have a Florida panther. This is really about communicating the work. I would have put another picture of Dr. Crowell up, but people are very fond of panthers. Not that they're not fond of you, but it's the natural beauty is what catches. Oh, I'm going down a wormhole here. This is not getting better for me. But really, the purpose is that there are canals and lakes all around us. They impact our way of life, our water supply, our ability to control the water to ensure we don't flood into our economy. And going forward, we need continuous support for FIU and their researchers to restoring the Everglades with AI and robotics. So thank you very much, everyone. I don't know. Yeah, Kenrick, Kenny, go by both, yes.
Yeah, I have a question. You said that you leverage AI and robotics. Like how exactly, are you using that technology?
Yes, so more specifically, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. It's not.
Yeah, so we are placing cameras out there and using AI to go through thousands of photos of species to look for invasive species. And we're also using AI automation to track in real time, or nearly real time, the water quality. So we have a buoy somewhere around here, I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure if it's
Convention center.
okay, it's at the convention center for an event. But we have a buoy that I showed in one of these slides. You can see it here with Dr. Crowell, and you can also see it there. And that is what's providing real-time data here. So that is how we're using AI. And we're also using it to track how deep the water is and whatnot, and where we need to move it from there, and make all sorts of different models to execute the restoration efforts.
And the reason for AI is if you think about 24 variables times 8 buoys every 5 minutes. That's a bunch of data, right? And so we can use traditional analyses and find the patterns that we know conceptually exist, but what we're doing now is looking for those patterns we didn't know exist because we have so much data now. And then it takes hundreds of hours to go out with scuba divers and stuff to look at coral reefs and seagrass beds and figure out what fish and stuff are using it. It takes a few hours for a submersible submarine to go underneath, take videos, and bring them back and use AI to analyze all the data. So it's a huge time savings and much higher quality data.
More consistent data. And drop the robots in and then leave them and report back to you.
And they're not biased. They bring back exactly what they said.
Good quality data. Yes.
So you graduate in 9 days. Yeah. How do you see yourself taking what you've been doing as part of this Hamilton College, right, and take that into your next step, right? Whether that's a career or grad school, whatever that is. How do you see yourself taking that into that next step?
Great question. So this has been a really formative experience. DC in general is. I ended up going to DC on a fly-in about the Everglades for 3 days with the help of FIU, and that made me want to come back and intern. And I still want to stay here, continue to work for my community. But if I wherever my profession is, or if I decide to go to law school, that's something I'm considering. I will always take this experience with me and take the diverse coalition of people that I work with every day, from consultants, lobbyists, advocates, government officials, and local officials as well, because this is also has a lot to do with state and local officials and local partnerships with them as well. So really, this is, in my view, DC is the Mecca where everybody goes to, right? So I will take that wherever I go and advocate for my community. Thank you. Up next, we have Mia.
Great job, Kenny.
Thank you.
Everyone, let's give it up for Kenny. A little bit more, right? Yeah. All right. Love this data, Kenny, but I got to get rid of it. It's no worries. I'm going to pull up mine now. Thank you. And just me. Okay, let me just pull this up for you guys. All good. And y'all can see this okay? Sorry, the corporate lingo has also imbued after this semester. But I am going to be the Hamilton Scholar that's focused a little bit more on defense tech commercialization. But before we get into that, you need to know who the heck I am. So, hello everyone. My name is Mia Rodriguez. My preferred pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm a senior this year at FIU under the Honors College, under the Green School. This is currently what I study. But what's not on the slide, and the whole reason why I'm here, is because as part of the Hamilton Scholars Program, I've had the opportunity to intern with the Department of Commerce, specifically the Economic Development Administration, and under that, 2 national programs, both Tech Hubs and Build to Scale. And those have had a big emphasis on commercialization, so that has been really, really helpful context throughout my semester project. So before we get into my project in specific, I wanted to give a little bit more context about the transition like my other colleagues have, but for me, with agencies having such a big part of it, this is a very big aspect that I wanted to touch on. So because we are getting into a new administration, different bureaucratic processes when it comes to key appointments to agencies has been a big obstacle, not too big, definitely been pushing through. But for example, some conversations I've been having with organizations have been like, hey, we are actually restructuring at this time. So once we get more into the new year, we can talk more about the technology that you are trying to commercialize. Additionally, pending budget legislation and presidential appointments have also been a huge reason as to why it's been stagnant, but little pieces have been coming together here and there. And then the most important aspect of the transition to our project is that national security is always going to be an interest from administration to administration. So the continued potential for this project is going to be an interest for the incoming administration, whether or not there's been changes. So moving on from that, I wanted to start off with a bit of an acronym soup. If anyone from EDA is watching, thank you for showing me what it means to be so aware of these. So if it sounds like I'm saying a little bit of gibberish, it just means DC has taught me how to talk in DC talk. So I wanted to give a little bit more idea of like different DoD acronyms as well as acronyms from our own FIU. So who is my client when I talk about defense tech commercialization? We're going to get into what commercialization means in a little bit. But overall, it is the FIU College of Engineering and Computing, but specifically within the college is this lovely person that I've gotten the opportunity to meet and connect with this semester, Dr. Stavros Georgakopoulos. He has a PhD in electrical engineering, and through his expertise, he has a specific interest in reconfigurable antennas. We're going to get into what those mean in the next slide. Additionally, he actually has an industry background, unlike other university researchers that I've gotten to know. He's the president and founder of his own company, Innovolex, and he runs the RF Comm Lab, which is radio frequency communications at FIU. Come on, Dr. Georgakopoulos. So the way I wanted to explain my presentation was kind of where have we been, what does this mean, where are we now, and where is it going? So what are reconfigurable antennas? Well, we can kind of understand what an antenna is based off a TV, right? Comes out of TV, and that's static. That's just creating the connection from wherever the TV needs to get the program. But what makes antennas reconfigurable is they change their frequency or their bandwidth in a dynamic way. So one of the ways that you'll see that later on is a different prototype that we have, where it's like the origami antenna, where it comes down into a smaller piece so that way soldiers can put it into their backpack. That's a dynamic way of changing your bandwidth and frequency. So why does this technology of reconfigurable antennas even matter? Why is this something more innovative for Dr. Georgakopoulos? Well, he has 3 types of technology that we'll touch on throughout the presentation. One where he can increase the bandwidth and miniaturize the antenna at the same exact time. One where it's ultra wideband radio frequency phased arrays. So instead of a traditional satellite, it's more of like a big block. So that way it has more surface area, therefore more ways to make connection via communications. And an analog beamformer. A lot of the ways that antennas work is that there are lasers coming out and picking up data. The more lasers there are, the more data you can pick up. And thank you so much. As you can see, reconfigurable, comes back down. We'll probably use it again later on. But if it's analog, it is a lot more difficult to hack into, thus a more secure way to move forward, whether it's military or civilian communications and intelligence. And overall, why does commercialization matter? If there's one thing that EDA taught me, commercialization is what drives economic development. It is wonderful what Dr. Georgakopoulos has been doing with his R&D, his research and development money from Air Force, from Army Corps of Engineers, but that's the majority of what universities do. Even former MIT President L. Raphael Late said at the Roadmap Summit held by EDA and the National Science Foundation that universities, even like MIT, are great at R&D, but we are bad at commercializing. It doesn't mean anything if our product is not on the market. So how do we get this TV antenna into a reconfigurable antenna that improves not just our military use, but our daily lives? So that's a little bit about where he has been, and this is an example of his ultra-wideband phased arrays. And I also wanted to say something very quickly. This is one of 4 defense technologies, so I'm happy to see a Hamilton Scott in the room that worked on cold spray. So very happy to carry on the defense tech torch. And that's a great segue into what the project is. It is commercializing reconfigurable antennas. The goal is for Dr. Georgakopoulos to commercialize any one of those 3 technologies because, as you'll see later on in the presentation, there are different standards to the point where they can commercialize. But what does that even mean? Even further, like this is the project this is the challenge I've had to tackle all semester. It means you either obtain a federal or private contract to sell and distribute these reconfigurable antennas. And I said federal or private. That's a big difference. Is this only for military use? Not at all. One of the biggest reasons why we have a lot more traction for marketing Dr. Georgakopoulos' technologies is that it is marketed for dual use. So him saying that this could be used for civilian purpose and research purposes is a big reason why its path to commercialization is a little bit faster. And that goes into what we've been doing now. Where we are now is talks with DIU, with INSIN, with DoD Office of Small Business, because they've been a great partner to FIU. Because I've been here in DC for the past semester, I've been able to carve a pathway into the federal government for Dr. Georgakopoulos. Because a big goal of what we're doing is upgrading the technology readiness level for DoD standards. When I met with an INSIN rep and showed Dr. Georgakopoulos technologies via a one-pager, she was like, for a private company, this is fantastic. But there is a possibility that DoD will consider this TRL level a 3, and you really want a 5 to 6 to get into commercialization. So that was a really big red flag for us to be like, there's more progress that has to move forward. So I researched companies at AUSA. These are some of the companies that are included, and this is a draft of what we were able to do and connect with Dr. Georgakopoulos further with different actors in the defense field. So where are we going? This is a great example of what he hopes his technologies can become. There are various funding opportunities under DoD that EDA and the connection with INSIN has helped me build. We are trying to improve his TRL for a testable prototype for DoD to review, which will be seen in the next slide. And a big goal of it is mainly securing that contract, because if we don't have a prototype, we can't have DoD test it out for a contract. So for the origami antennas, this is a prototype. But for the 3 technologies that I've discussed, that is something that we are currently working towards. So that way, once DoD can see what this does, they can try to see if they want a contract, or a private company such as Teledyne could look into it and see if they would also want to do a contract with Georgakopoulos' technologies. Putting this into a bigger context, why does this matter for the US and why does this matter for national security? Well, the more secure these antennas are and the more widespread that they are, it is less likely for top secret information leaks. Something I learned, a big thing I learned at FIU when I learned about intelligence briefing is like many ways that Crimea could have been avoided is if we had more secure intelligence. So this is working towards that. In a military sense, the less visible an antenna is, the safer soldiers are on the field because enemy forces will not be able to see that. And broadband access, this is arguably the biggest civilian use. There's actually a bureau in commerce, NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, that focuses on broadband access. So this would improve the speed of comms and be used for research purposes. Here are some key players. This is a little bit more on at least Armed Services Committee in House and Senate, but there are more like foreign affairs that could be involved. Also some key players, the Transforming Antenna Center, that he is also, Dr. Georgakopoulos is also the director of, and some companies which he even at AUSA, they were talking about NDAs. So it's a pretty good sign when you want to commercialize defense technology. So that is my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer, but thank you for listening. What's up?
I have a question. I see that you're very passionate about how you're talking about this project, so I'm more interested in how that project is going to shape your career moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. So I honestly fought for this to be the project that I wanted to do because even though being an IR student, being a poli-sci student in FIU, you understand how difficult it is to manage war and manage human rights issues. But the thing with this is that dual use is something that is like a new trend for the defense industry. Someone I spoke with at Commerce that used to be an aerospace engineer was like, you said dual use 20 years ago and it was a bad word. Now it is the entire industry. So the fact that we have invested so much into the military industrial complex that everything we've already invested could be doubled for its use and actually improve daily life, that's something that I wanted to work towards and advocate towards. So for me, as someone who wants to go into more national security, wherever my opportunities take me to, this is something really big for me. And also understanding how important broadband access is and how the right to internet is now almost like a new human right today is something that I've become more passionate with as a result. So with Dr. Georgakopoulos technology and other defense dual use technology, because FIU has been ahead of the curve, being like we want to push for dual use, that's where I want to keep pushing my contributions forward. Anything that I think could have a second aspect that can improve civilian life. Thank you for that question, Carlos. I appreciate it.
One final question. Thank
Yeah, what's up?
How's your presence here in DC as an undergraduate poli-sci and IR major sort of been a game changer for Dr. Georgakopoulos' efforts to commercialize when we have Carlos? Carlos has been here for decades. How is your presence helping to accelerate that?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, because honestly, what I thought was my biggest weakness coming in has been my biggest strength. I'm in EDA, I'm in with other interns who are in applied math and engineering, and I don't know how to work in his lab. But I know what his lab stands for, and I know what he's trying to do. So when you have someone who's like the science person, who has the data, who has everything together, and you have someone right next to him that's that policy person that's advocating for them, people would listen more. I would I would listen to Dr. Georgakopoulos at AUSA and be like, okay, and this and that. But then I'd be like, wait, someone else wants to talk to you. Let me talk about this. And suddenly he'd leave his meeting to go to mine. I'm like, this is crazy. So the fact that me being poli-sci, me being IR, I thought that was something that was holding me back. It was actually my biggest strength. Sitting here and being like, I'm not as in it as the rest of everyone who else is invested in this research. So I come in with it with a fresh view, and I come in with it as more of an advocate rather than being like, this is my life's work. Sometimes like it can be more difficult when you're really connected to it. But I generally realized that if I see a goal and I find ways to help them, that's always what I've wanted to do. That's something that this entire program and the entirety of the FIU and DC program made me realize. I may not know how to code and how to program, but I can talk up everything that you're doing and make sure that you get money to keep doing what you want to do for the rest of your life. I'll get rid of this for you here. And here you go.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Just going to pull up my presentation. Sorry, which one? Which one?
Just push. Just
Oh,
hold it.
sorry about that. Okay, awesome. Still getting used to the screen. Thanks, everyone. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. Awesome. So So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here to listen to me speak about my presentation. My name is Monica Mata, and I had the immense privilege of serving as a Hamilton Scholar this fall with FIU in DC. And I am so proud to present my project to you all, Empowering Communities Through Positive, Tech-Ready Small Business Policy.
You have to pin the.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Awesome. So let's get started. So quickly, just an introduction summary about me so you know my background and what I'm studying. My major is international business with the College of Business at FIU. I'm a proud FIU Honors College student. I'm obtaining a certificate in international trade and investment along with a minor in professional sales. So really trying to, throughout my undergrad experience, have a very holistic viewpoint. That's the entirety of what I'm passionate for. And I believe it's any solutions, whatever we're talking about. I'm going to be talking about small business policy, but all these other incredible things we're speaking about, it all encompasses a holistic viewpoint in order to ensure those solutions for people long term. So while being in DC, I had the immense privilege of serving as a Chile global leader. And for those who don't know, Chile is the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, and they are based in DC. They're a nonprofit. They have the goal of diversifying the Hispanic community's diversity of thought. And so,
Watch your back.
sorry about that, technical difficulties. But I was really grateful to be a part of this program because as a second generation Cuban American, and coming up to DC in a program that allowed me to honor my heritage and use that as a community that inspired me while being here in DC to talk to people, especially being here during Hispanic Heritage Month. That is something that I'll take with me forever, and I was just really grateful for that. And for my placements through Chile, I was really grateful because the first half of the program, I get to serve in a congressional placement, and I was serving for Representative Jasmine Crockett, while the second half, I was working for Home Depot Government Relations Team. And again, my Hamilton Scholar focus area, I'm going to be talking to you all about small business. So just a quick rundown for who I am. I'm choosing to study this because I'm really passionate about people-centric education. That is the encompassing of my entire undergraduate experience. So while being here in DC, I wanted to focus on small business policy and how the connection between corporate and federal collaborations can help to inspire people through that. So why is this project important? So I wanted to create this visual because it encompasses the three trifectas of what I'm hoping to encompass through my conversation with you all. So small business policy is what I was here to research and learn more on, but I would be doing us a disservice if I didn't include how this has to go together with education and emerging technologies. My mom is a teacher, and definitely I have a big impact on how much education matters throughout whatever issue we're discussing, for this being small business. And my dad, coming with a background in business and technology, I really got to see how the three come together and how, in order to improve small business policies for businesses and entrepreneurs, you have to improve the education. And in order to improve the education, you have to touch on the emerging technologies and how this is transforming the business landscape for everyone. Because with AI and machine learning, as I'll get into later, it's a part of the solution. And however we feel about it, we have to be ready to give people the resources to tackle that. So what is my why for this? As I mentioned, my major is international business. And so while I'm very passionate about the global perspective and how all the economies of all the different countries have to come together to work together, I also realize that from growing up in America, I have the American viewpoint of the small businesses are the foundation of our economy that build the economy that we utilize to interact with other countries. And it is the same for all other countries. Their small businesses, their mom and pop shops, they ultimately uplift the countries so that they can build up to have a foundation to work with other nations in this huge global economy. It's all connected, and that's really why I wanted to touch on this holistic viewpoint. So who are my clients for FIU? I'm really lucky because this aligned very well with my timeline for graduation. I go back to Miami in the spring, and I'm going to have one more semester in Miami, and I'm going to be able to meet with these clients firsthand. Who are these clients? So we have the incredible Startup FIU. the Small Business Development Center working with FIU Business, and the FIU Florida International University ATOM Collaborative, which is touching on artificial intelligence, data science, and machine learning. And we have a bunch of incredible professors within that foundation that really work on projects pertaining to these issues. So my ultimate goal is to combine these three. Sorry about that. Gonna step away from the. Sorry. How do you... Okay. Sorry, guys. Still learning. But I'll go ahead and. So my ultimate goal is to combine these three clients because they all touch on the previous matters that are discussed that are important to interconnect for these solutions. So what did I contribute during my time here in DC with FIU? So shout out Carlos for helping me with this. October 28th, we hosted National Climate Tech Hub with a bunch of different universities here in this very room, actually. So very full circle moment for me. And we were able to have the conversations surrounding, for those who don't know, I know Kenny touched on it in his presentation, over 10 million was awarded to these climate tech hubs that are working on these initiatives for universities. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, you hear climate, how does this tie into the issue with small business? Well, I brought in my small business perspective to the issues by emailing representatives from small business programs that were already being invited to the event to gain those people who have that perspective working with small business policy every day. And I also had the immense pleasure of speaking with Emily Gresham, who is FIU's very own Associate Vice President and co-founder of Startup FIU, working with those startups in FIU. So I was really grateful to have here in the panel. And the way that I kind of spun this was... For the panel, I was able to ask questions specifically pertaining to what are some things going on in the tech hub that pertain to uplifting small businesses and startups. And I was really grateful because when speaking to Emily, I was able to gain perspective on how through the funding that's going into the Climate Tech Hub, it's actually giving money to FIU to help mentor small businesses that are hoping to break into the economy. So I was really grateful to learn more of that insight and also just give that perspective to the people who were able to attend this event because it brought a perspective that wasn't necessarily there before. And it just shows how if you dig beneath the surfaces, even if it's not the main highlight, there's so many different things that could be wrapped into a solution. And so I was really grateful for that with the time and my amazing panelists. And how this ties into the key stakeholders in DC. So the main two that I wanted to highlight were the Senate Committee on Small Business and the House Committee on Small Business. While serving in Congress, even though my member was not sitting on the House Committee herself, I was still able to have these conversations and have these coffee chats of what are those conversations looking like, what is important at the forefront of what people are worried about right now. And I was also able to sit in on meetings pertaining to her working with small businesses. She was the representative from Texas 30th District, so I got to meet with companies that had traveled from that district and hear what their concerns were, hear what their priorities were, and I really gained a lot and I was really grateful for my time there. So definitely key stakeholders that we need to keep in mind when touching on how does this connect back to DC. And so finally, my ask for the future is my goal upon returning to FIU is, like I mentioned before, I really want to make a collaboration between Startup FIU, the Small Business Development Center, and the ATOM Collective. I want to get a meeting in person with three. Already excited to continue my conversations with Emily, and I really want to show them how the research I've done in DC, how all of these things connect, and work on a publication with them that I could utilize with FIU to give this, ultimately my goal is education for all the people, as many people as possible. So through this collaboration and through publishing with all three of them, I'll be able to fulfill that and reach as many audiences as possible, and while at the same time ensuring FIU's front of the leadership of the initiatives. So yeah, really excited to go back to Miami and continue this process. And I'm just really grateful for everything I've been able to accomplish here. And then finally, just to conclude my story, I definitely, encompassing my why, these were some highlights from my time here in DC that really just helped to give the full circle of my why. So these are some of my incredible friends who are all FIU alumni and have also served as Hamilton Scholars. And really, I was able to gain a lot of inspiration from them. And also, like I mentioned previously, I had the immense privilege of being here during Hispanic Heritage Month, and that was really healing for me. I was just surrounded by such amazing things. Here is a picture from the Museum of the National Latino. The Smithsonian, while they announced that they're going to put funding into a museum for us, they haven't yet. That's going to take a little while to actually build the museum. So in the meantime, they have, and I implore anyone who's able to go, it does end December, but there is a museum, like little section that's dedicated to it in the meantime, in the Museum of American History. And I was able to see that, I was able to take my family when they visited, and it was just really, really near and dear to my heart, and I will definitely carry that. I also got to meet the Honorable Ileana, who is the first Latina to ever serve in Congress, and is actually chairwoman for Chile, so I love how everything is connected. This is me with Representative Jasmine Crockett, filming for Chile, my time at the Home Depot, and shout out Carlos again for inviting me. This is a sculpture from the Excelencia in Education event I had the privilege of going to, where I really got to see so much work that is going into this to advance Latinos in higher education. So all of this to say, I'm really grateful for my journey here and how I was able to expand on my small business policy passions. And I really hope to just continue inspiring and learning with as many people as I can. And just to end with a personal brand, you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And I want everyone to just take that away with them. So thank you so much for giving me this platform and for bearing with me with the technical difficulties. And thank you so much for your time. Any questions? Yeah, thank you.
Your favorite part of your semester here in DC?
Amazing question. Thank you so much for asking. I definitely think being here for Hispanic Heritage Month and just all the things that I got to witness and all the people I got to meet, that's definitely a highlight of the semester for me. And also just how I was able to encompass it into what I was actually working on with my research. I did a video for Hispanic Heritage Month with Chile, where I got to research on how the Hispanic small business community contributes over $800 billion per year annually to the annual GDP of our country. And so, while I don't know the exact percentage of the 33 million small businesses that are registered with the Small Business Administration in the US, I do know that part of that was inspired by my time here and really connecting those things. It was cool to see. So thank you again for asking.
I'll just make a general comment, all four of you, great job. It makes my heart warm. I hear young, smart people say, my goal in life is to find funding so you can keep going. I love that as a goal. But for those of you who came with us from AGU, a lot of you are graduate students, postdocs, you're teaching classes. You're going to meet students as you're TAing your classes and stuff who have a passion for policy or want to make more of a difference. Think about this program. And so you can let graduates and even graduate students know that by you teaching that this program exists and that this resource is up here. It's a really wonderful, unique opportunity. Good job, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Yes. Of course.
It caught my attention multiple things. One, that I was very impressed is how eloquent and well spoken you all are. Congrats on that. You guys have different backgrounds, so but then you're advocating for things that you are not trained in. And so one thing that calls my attention is how do you go about filling that gap? You come in with some passion, with some interest, but not necessarily knowledge on that. And so is it something that you feel that you're missing in your training? Is it something that could be incorporated as part of your degree? Or you just don't know, and this is where you are at right now, and this is when you feel passionate about it, and then there is just no other way to go about it, but then now is the time for you to learn. And so I want to see what you can say about your experience based on here you are, now you become part of something. Could have been better to learn a little bit of some of this in the past, or not.
Yeah, for sure. I'm cool to start off and then hand off to you guys, if that's cool. So, I love the question, first of all, because it's something I thought of before coming here. And I definitely, when looking at, besides getting the educational aspect, like you said, if you don't have the knowledge, I knew that I had the ethos and the pathos of like the argument that I wanted to bring. So the ethos being like the emotion, like I definitely care about it. or sorry, I think I switched up those paths. Sorry about that. So what I was missing was the credibility. And so even though my major was international business, I know that you can get so niche within that. So I made it my mission to fill those gaps, like you said, that might exist. So this past summer, I got a certification through FIU in artificial intelligence, how it works and its impact. And then this fall, while I was working in DC, at the same time I was doing full-time classes, I also was working for another certificate in data machine learning, how to communicate with data, because I recognize that those gaps are going to be imminent, especially before I obtain my degree. So I worked on analyzing those gaps that might exist and figuring out how could I higher up my credibility to ensure that I could work on that knowledge and bring it to the table in the conversation. So making sure that I have the research, the knowledge, but also encompassing all three, ethos, logos, and pathos. I bring the logic and I bring the passion, but also ensuring that I'm working on that knowledge before I graduate so that I bring that as well to the table, all encompassing. But thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. So for me, first answering that part, go ahead. For this semester with Dr. Georgakopoulos, I pared it down to a conversation. I was sitting down with someone who has dedicated a lot of time to this research and had a goal in mind. So I was like, great, how do I fit into this? So when I first thought, how do I fit into this? I looked back on what I've been studying, like political science, international relations, Asian studies, and law. So for me, a lot of my papers in school have been centered around defense, specifically Japanese defense and how that impacts the East Asian region. So I just knew about the diplomacy, different prime ministers talking in a talk and being like, this is where all these antennas are going to be. But now I'm sitting with someone who is supplying those antennas. So even though I might not be in defense tech commercialization for all of my career, he helped me realize something about myself. The fact that with growing concerns of China and how they're building 5G technology with Huawei now more into defense use than previously, it's something that I realized this knowledge and this passion I have is essential to us maintaining national security here and abroad for those who need it. So that's why, even though I wasn't too keen on it, like I said earlier, that I don't have a background in engineering. My grandpa was a mechanical engineer. A lot of people in my family are STEM. And my parents own a small business, and it's something that I was like, how do I fit into this? And I realized that I can be the policy side of it. So again, even though I might not do it for the next 40 years, like other people, like even at EDA, I've seen them be career civil servants and be involved in tech commercialization. It's something that I'm always going to carry with me, and it's always going to be a building block to what I eventually want to impact on when I'm a bit older and have more of an idea of what's going on, because we have figured out a lot this semester, but there's a lot more to learn. So thank you for asking the question to all of us. Really appreciate it. No?
Anybody else? Okay. Just making sure. Time. So I feel like I have a very different take on it just because I'm in communication. So it's more of like a broad aspect of things. So for me, I feel like I got a very good lesson into what communications is as a whole, into like you can go into very different types of niches and kind of just learn about all these different types of things and go into it. So I feel like for me, it was like kind of different just because I really don't have any experience with environment or engineering or any of that type of stuff. So it was more of like, how do I teach myself all of this information in a short period of time so that I am able to communicate it to the masses in a way that it's eloquent and then people can understand it and it's like, makes sense. And I feel like as a whole, that's kind of what communications is. So it was more of like that side of things, if it makes sense.
You tell that story, girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And really, in my view, to bridge the gap, you really hit the nail on the head with passion. That's why I'm into it. But it's about applying your passion to your expertise. So we're studying politics, right? Primarily politics and communications. So it's being able to immerse yourself with researchers like Dr. Crow and like all the other researchers, and using that sound effects over here. Using that to drive what you do for your community, because that's what this is all about. This is all for a better quality of life, whether it's more small businesses that are impactful, whether it's making sure we're resistant from natural disasters, or making sure that we are the leading technological superpower with collapsible antennas or restoring the Everglades and the water flow for our drinking water. So really it's just taking the leap and trying to immerse yourself with the best people to enact policy, because we can know the members of the Florida congressional delegation, we can know the committees and the important key players, but they really know the science, and it's really just bridging that gap. So if that answers your question.
I'll say one more thing for you guys, pat yourselves on the back if you haven't done yet. One thing that they all have in common is they're good astute listeners. Right, so they listen, and when you have events here, they're always in the back listening, they're always going around, meeting people, and so they listen to the kinds of things.
And ask good questions.
And just to add to the answer, there was 2 years ago having the scholar. You asked if they would require like extra classes or training on the field, right? And I will say that being a Hamilton scholar is that training, right? You come here, even if you decide to run for office one day, you're gonna get hit with topics that you have no idea of. So being here, being exposed to that constant multi-section of ideas and projects and policy, that is a change maker, right? Being exposed to that, and that's why Hamilton Scholars is the program that it is, because it forms you to be that person.
Carlos, your project was?
Cold Spray Technologies.
Kiyomi Cabral, the project was?
Access to higher education, specifically graduate programs.
Mine was AI and Small Business and Small Business Development Center, Mike.
Did I miss anyone?
Can we apply now?
You can.
We will gladly take you, girl.
Thank you.
I will add to what part of the listening, as I made my pitch to the faculty, postdoc, graduate students, the fact that we have a constant steady stream of great faculty and talent like you that are willing to share what it is you're doing and translate it. A lot of the game that probably is translation, maybe a very heavy weighted abstract, but you got to be able to translate that into four quick talking points for a congressional staffer that's 24 years old and doesn't know the first thing about the Everglades.
Very true.
Well, great job, everybody, and thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We hope that you'll continue the mingling. And just so you know, for any of our researchers, we, as part of our programmings and our fly-ins, are adding more and more lab visits. We want our students who are in Miami coming to Washington, D.C., and our students going back to Miami to be our envoys, to be our advocates. And so we are working on tours. So if there's any kind of cool research or an opportunity for you to speak to any of our students, we are always constantly looking to update our list. We also have some lunch and learns that we're planning. So we want to definitely connect our students, our professional staff to what's going on, so everyone can be an advocate in those champions, but also can relay that information back and forth and understand it in simple ways.
And a special extra shout out to Charlotte Stanford.
Professor!
Emphasize Char has worked in Congress as a chief of staff, worked herself